Hey guys, how's it going? Hope everybody's doing well out there. Recently, a new service was brought to my attention. It's a service called Mistborn, and to quote their GitLab page, Mistborn is your own personal private cloud platform and WebUI that manages self-hosted service and secures them with a firewall. It also uses a Wireguard VPN. You'll actually need that in order to connect to the dashboard at all, but we're going to go through that process of getting all of that set up. It also sets up PiHole with DNSCrypt and IP filtering. And then there's some additional stuff that you can install to expand your server, things like NextCloud, Jitsi, Home Assistant, and more. So let's just go ahead and jump into this. But I guess before we do that, we should talk about the hardware that I'm going to be using for this setup. Now, if you've been following this channel for a while, you'll have probably seen the server that I use that I call Tanix. And the reason I call it Tanix is because, well, it's this right here. This is a mini PC. This is a TX85. And right there on the top of it, it actually says Tanix. So that's what I named the server, so I wouldn't have to try to think about it too awful much. The problem is that this is no longer available on Amazon. You can see that this is the TX85. It's got 4 gigs of RAM and 64 gigs of onboard eMMC storage. Again, like I said, this isn't available. So they've actually got a newer version. This is the TX88. This has got 8 gigs of RAM and 64 gigs of storage. Ideally, this is the one I would be using if I was going to set this up long term. But I don't have it. I'm going to use the TX85 version of this with 4 gigs of RAM and 64 gigs of storage. But if you want to pick up just a small little unit to run this, I will have a link to this in the description down below. Like I said, they've got a GitLab page here that you can go in, and I highly recommend you take a look at this. Again, this will be available in the description down below as well. And you can see that they've been updating it within the last couple of weeks. If we scroll down, where there's some information here, there's some screenshots of what your dashboard would look like. A little further down, they were in Linux Magazine. Then there's a table of contents below that. And there's a ton of information in here that I highly recommend you look at. It does apparently support both x86/64 as well as ARM platforms to a certain degree. There are some recommended system configurations if you want to take a look at that as far as what you should be able to get away with based on your current configuration, or if you're setting up a VM, what kind of configurations you might need in order to get a successful run. What I can say though is I have actually gone so far as to install NextCloud and Bitwarden on this TX85 with only 4 gigs. I haven't done a ton of testing with it, but it worked. It was functional. I was able to use it. So kind of play with that as you see fit. Below that, there's some information here as far as the actual installation, but we're going to go through it a little bit differently. If we keep scrolling down, you can kind of see everything going on here as far as how they've got things set up. They've got some additional stuff in here that you can configure for security information and event management, or SIEM. And below that, there's more information about one of the security features in there. So if we keep scrolling, there are some gateways in here, remote desktop, basically just some good information. One thing I would recommend you come to visit this page for, if you keep scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and get to the bottom, or near the bottom anyway, here's a list of all of the different subdomains or domains that you would be using. Whatever.mistborn would be what's available here, and you can see the default status, whether on or off. Default credentials. When we go through the process of setting this up, we're going to set up a password. And that password will be the password for all of these different apps. And this would be the username that you would use with that password that we're going to set up. So it's going to be one password across the board. The nice thing about this is you, again, have to set up a user in order to even connect to this. So the chance of somebody else getting on your network and finding your one password next to 0. So some more information down here. So there's links to all kinds of different stuff in here if you want to go get the apps for those. There's some information like where's my data stored right there in OPT. Additional volumes can be mounted, it looks like. So just some good information. in here as far as that's concerned. So let's go ahead and actually jump into the installation process. Now, I'm going to be using Ubuntu 20.04 for this install, but you should be able to use either newer or older versions of this. Now, I will say that I've got a clean, fresh install of Ubuntu 20.04, but something to keep in mind is that you need to make sure that you run sudo apt update and sudo apt upgrade before you try to do anything. Run both of those commands. Once that's all done, then do a reboot, and then we can actually jump into doing the installation of the service here. So, all of that said, let's go ahead and minimize this. We'll go ahead and bring up Windows Terminal. Yeah, I'm using Windows Terminal. Congratulations. So let's make this a little bit bigger so you can kind of see what's going on here. Again, the first thing that you need to do is run apt update, upgrade, and reboot. Again, you have to do that. If you don't, you can't run the install script. It'll tell you to do that first. So just something to keep in mind there. Again, because I'm using a fresh install of all of this, the first thing I need to do is install Git. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Oops. So go ahead and do this. So that's good to go. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to do a Git clone of the GitLab repository here for Cyber 5K. So we'll go ahead and just paste this in. Again, all of this will be available in the description. So we've gone ahead and got that. Now let's make sure that we've actually got it. Right there is Mistborn. So let's do a CD into Mistborn and just take a look. So we know that everything is in here and working. So we're good to go at that point. So let's do, let's just go back a directory there and clear our screen. So the next thing we're going to do is run an install script like so. So it's going to be sudo bash, and then we're just going to say go into the Mistborn directory, go into the scripts directory, and run install.sh. So we're going to go ahead and click enter there. And here we can see that it's going to go through a process of downloading and extracting all of the stuff that it needs to do. This may take a while, depending on both your hardware as well as your internet connections. So what I'm going to do, well, right here it says set the default admin password. Now, here's the thing. It can only contain alphanumeric characters. So if you use exclamation points or hashtags or whatever, you can't. So keep that in mind. I believe also it needs to have two uppercase, at least two uppercase and at least two lowercase characters. So so play with that as you need to. So like so. And then, so the password is set. So now it's saying, do you want to install Cockpit? A somewhat resource-heavy, intensive management graphical interface. Not recommended on Raspberry Pi, yes or no. Let's go ahead and do that. That's fine. So we'll go ahead and say yes and hit enter. So now it's going to go ahead and generate an SSH key pair for Mistborn, and then it's going to go through this process of downloading and extracting and processing and all of that kind of stuff. So let's go ahead and just give this a little while, and then I will come back when this is done. Okay, so here we are several minutes later. Not too bad, really, for everything that it's doing in the background there, but here we are, and here it's got a couple of different things to take a look at here. It says, the first thing says, watch Mistborn start. So if we go ahead and run that, like so, and, oops, that's not right. That's not right. Let's just type that out. Journal, CTL, XFU Mistborn -base. So here we can see it kind of go through its process of setting everything up. And we'll want to give this a few minutes to go ahead and do what it needs to do in order to get everything all set up. This could take a little while, so just kind of hang out, wait for it to finish up, do its thing. And then we can actually move on to the next step, which will be generating a key, or a configuration rather, for your WireGuard. So I guess while this is doing its thing, we can actually be doing something in the background to be a little bit more time sensitive, I guess, or aware of our time. So what we want to do, make sure that we get WireGuard installed on your system. Of course, if you've got Windows or Mac or Ubuntu, Android, iOS, The list really does go on here with everything that they made WireGuard compatible with. Of course, again, as everything else, this link will be available in the description down below. So what you'll want to do is find the installation method for your system. Go ahead and get it installed, and then we can go ahead and close that out. And then right here, I've got WireGuard. And here we can see that I don't have any tunnels or anything set up. So we're just going to kind of set this off to the side for a moment. And again, when this is done, we'll go ahead and take another look. And we'll just give this a few minutes, and then we'll come back and move on to the next parts here. Okay, so this has been running for a while, so we're just going to go ahead and kill that for now. So let's close this out over here. And then what I want to do is actually run the next command. And the next command is actually going to be in order to generate the configuration file for WireGuard here. So I'm just going to go ahead and paste this like so, and then we'll hit enter. So it's going to go through this process of generating our configuration here. Now, what I'm going to do is actually drag this up a little bit so we can get more screen. What we want to make sure of is that we start right here. Where it says starting Mistborn production, PostgreSQL or PostgreSQL, however that's pronounced. I've never known that. Maybe somebody in the comments can explain that to me. Anyway, this SQL is available. So what we want to do here is actually just copy this, like so. And I want to make sure that I actually got that copied. I did. Perfect. And I don't care if you see any of this. I'm not going to use this server setup anyway, so none of this matters really. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to minimize this, and I'm going to save this as, I'm going to do File, Save As, and here, let's say WireGuard tutorial.conf. It needs to be .conf, and then just select this as all files like so. In fact, right there's the original one that I did when I was doing some testing. So I'm just going to click on Save. And then what we're going to do is we're going to open this up. We're going to import a tunnel from a file. And then I'm going to do this WireGuard tutorial.conf and click Open and Activate. And there we go. So now we're actually connected to the server. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up Chrome. And then I'll pop this open. And I'm going to say home.mistborn. Hopefully that should work here in just a moment. There we go. So now we're able to connect to our Mistborn dashboard. Now what I want to show you here, I'm going to come over to here. I'm going to deactivate this so that it's not connected. And then what I'll do is I'll just refresh. Site can't be reached. So let's do home.mistborn, site can't be reached. So then let's come back over here and activate this. Give that a second to do its thing. And then this page should refresh here in a moment. Let's go ahead and refresh both of those. And there we go. Now Mistborn is up and running. So if you wanted to, you've got a couple of different things that you can do at this point. You could just use this tunnel for your local access and make sure that only you can access this server on your local network when you're at home. If, however, you wanted to make this available to the outside world, let's say you're on your phone or your laptop or whatever, and you leave and you still want access to this server at home, what you're going to do is you're going to give it a name. So I'm just going to call this remote. And then WireGuard for the profile type is fine. You could do multi-factor authentication, but WireGuard for right now is fine. Your gateway is fine. And right here it says select endpoint IP address. This is the IP address of this server internally. So if you were to use this again locally, selecting this endpoint IP address would be fine. However, we want to make this available to the internet. So I'm going to select this. And that's my public IP address. That's the IP address that my ISP assigned to my modem. So when I go ahead and create this, what it's going to do, I'm going to click create. It's going to think for a second. And then it will generate another one of these default, basically create another QR code that I can then scan with my phone. So we'll go ahead and give this a second. There we go. So now it's created this remote access, and you'll see that my IP address, my public IP address there is grayed out. But what you'll notice is there is a port number after my IP address, and that 42703 was randomly generated. And what you'll need to do in order to access this remotely is you'll have to do some port forwarding. So if you have a modem router combo unit that you use, you should just be able to do it there and be done. However, if you've got a modem that your ISP has given you that then forwards to a router that you've installed, you'll have to forward from the modem to the router to the server. It's kind of a convoluted process, but that's what you have to do when you've got multiple devices in the way. So just know that you will have to do that. Now, for the sake of the rest of this video and editing purposes later, I'm going to go ahead and remove this remote access thing here. But all you'd have to do with this is open up your phone, open up WireGuard on your phone rather, and scan this with the app, and it would automatically connect and do what it needs to do. Now, the one thing to keep in mind here is that you won't be able to connect you won't be able to use the remote connection if you're on your home network. It just doesn't work well that way. So just make sure that you're using the right profile depending on where you are. So again, I'm going to go ahead and remove that. That's going to go away. Okay, so that was just getting logged in. Now we can go ahead and take a look over here at gateways. You could create new gateways if you wanted to do that. Let's just call this MyNet, just for the sake of it. Let's see what this does. I actually haven't done this before, so let's take a look. Okay, so apparently you can just set up gateways for different reasons here. Again, that shows my server IP address. I'll have to block that out later, but that's fine. You can also create additional users if you want to do that, and maybe give other people access to your home server here. And here's the thing, right? Like, we've only just set up the VPN portion of things to access our network. So let's go over here and take a look at system. Here we've got Cockpit, which is just a server setup or server management. So we can just do DBTech. Oops. Like that. Oops, wrong username or password. So that should be right. Let's try that. There we go. So I used the username and password for Ubuntu here. But basically, you get an idea of what's going on with your server, all kinds of different stuff in here if you want to take a look at Cockpit. So let's come back out of here. Okay, so next thing, if we come over here to Firewall and click there, we can click on Pihole, for instance. So because we're connected to this server using the WireGuard VPN, we automatically get Pihole protection here. So we can go ahead, click on Login if you want to do that. So the password we're going to use is the password that we set up when we were starting the setup process for Mistborn. So whatever password you used there, should be able to go ahead and type that in there. Click Login, and then basically at this point you can do whatever you want to do with Pihole. I've made videos about Pihole in the past that you can take a look at if you're not sure how Pihole works. So that's what's going on with that. So let's come back over here. We've got Copper Cloud, so we can manage outgoing IP addresses for security purposes using Copper Cloud. We've got metrics over here that we can take a look at. Basically, there's nothing going on yet. Nobody has tried to connect. So there's not going to be any information in here right now because this is a brand new server. So let's go ahead and take a look at, well, I guess security server, or security center rather. So there are some different things in here, and you'll want to kind of base whether or not you install this stuff on your server configuration, like we talked about at the beginning, as far as how much do you have for system resources to handle some of this stuff. Waza is, like it says here, it's an open source and enterprise-ready security monitoring solution for threat detection and integrity monitoring. You can read that for yourself, but basically it's just a way to get more reporting from your system. So right now I've got a 4 gig system, not advised to do that on here. So next thing I'm going to do is manage extra services. WireGuard, if I click that, is just going to take me over here. Hopefully, there we go. Yeah, right back to there. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Manage Extra Services. And here is where we can actually start installing additional applications to be available on our server. Now, the big one, there's a couple of them that I like to install basically on any server that I'm deploying for the first time. And that's going to be NextCloud, right up here. And then over here, we've also got Bitwarden that you can install as well. There's Jellyfin. I don't know if I would want to install Jellyfin. You could, I guess, if you wanted to, if you had a system that would support it, go right ahead. OnlyOffice is an option. Guacamole, or Guacamole, Sync Thing. Raspberry Pi, if you wanted to set up a Wi-Fi portal, you could do that as well. But for the sake of what we're going to do right now, let's just go ahead and click on Start for Mistborn NextCloud. And of course, we'll give this a minute to do its thing. And then this really will take a few minutes to set up, but after that, it's not too bad. So here we can see Mistborn NextCloud service is starting. This may take a few minutes. In fact, you can't even click that yet. I think, though, let's just go ahead and hit refresh just for the sake of it. Let's see what happens. There we go. So it says that it's running. So right now, it's just going to be going through the setup process. We've got the option to either stop or open. So we'll just click open. And it says 404 page not found. That's fine. Don't worry about that. Basically, what it's still in the setup process, so that's not going to work very well. So what we want to do is just give this some time. One other thing to keep in mind here is that I believe we can run this on HTTPS, so that's something to keep in mind as well. It's a self-signed certificate, so just keep that in mind as well. The reason I bring this up is actually for later. Let's make sure that that S is in there, so that's good. The reason I wanted to bring this up is because Bitwarden, which is actually something else now. They're going through a rebranding, but for right now, we're going to call it Bitwarden. Basically, Bitwarden won't run on just HTTP. It needs HTTPS in order for this to work. So just something to keep in mind that you will need to have. You will need to type in HTTPS at the beginning of your URL when you try to go to Bitwarden. So let's go ahead and come back over here and hit refresh. Still nothing. So we'll go ahead and again, we'll give this a few minutes to do its thing. And then we'll try it again here in a couple of minutes and see what happens.
A few moments later.
Okay, so here we are a few minutes later, and we'll notice that it went from 404 not found to bad gateway. And believe it or not, that's actually progress. That means that we're actually getting past the initial setup. We're doing a bit more in the background, and we're getting very, very close to having an operational system here. So let's go ahead and, again, we'll just give this a couple more minutes to do its thing, and then we'll try it again.
Eventually.
Okay, so again, here we are a couple of minutes later, and we're brought to a login screen. So this is a good step. This is what we want to see. So what we need to do is log in, obviously, and the username by default is Mistborn. And then the password, again, is the password that you set up during the Mistborn configuration. So, like so. Go ahead and give this a minute to log in. Of course, it's still running some stuff in the background. I'm jumping into this a bit prematurely here. But basically, here we go. Here is our startup screen. Here is the tutorial, the introduction on how we can, of course, get the most out of NextCloud. And of course, we can connect. Now, when you go through this process of connecting, you will want to make sure that you use the nextcloud.mistborn URL in your app, whether it's on your desktop or your phone or whatever. And you'll only, again, be able to access this when you're connected to the VPN via Wireguard. So this is only accessible via that. In fact, if I were to go in here and shut off Wireguard, I would lose access to this until I reconnected to the server with it. So now that we've got that up and running, here, let's just go ahead and jump in. We can just jump in here and take a look at this PDF, for instance. And we'll give it a second to load. And there it is. There's the user manual for Wireguard, or sorry, for NextCloud, rather. So let's exit out of there. We can come over to here and we can go to apps, for instance. We can install whatever apps we want to install. Of course, again, keep in mind your system resources. If you're just setting this up on a little tiny computer like I'm doing, be aware of that again. So all kinds of stuff that you can go in here and turn on and off and install and whatever you want to do. This is a full-blown version of NextCloud, but you just have to use Wireguard to connect to it. So now that we have that, let's go ahead and take a look at Bitwarden as well. Again, we're going to click Start, and then the page should reload with the green banner at the top that says the Mistborn Bitwarden is starting. This may take a few minutes or however that is worded. So let's give this a minute. Yep, service is starting. This may take a few minutes.
Later.
Okay, so we skipped over the bad gateway, so that's good. What we want to do here, though, because there is no master admin account for this, we'll go ahead and click on create account. Let's make sure though that we've got HTTPS in front of that. Otherwise it won't work. And that's fine. This doesn't matter. Again, this is all encrypted through the VPN. So email address, go ahead and type that in. And we'll go ahead and click submit. So now I can log in. And there we go. Just like that. Now we're able to access Bitwarden as well. Here again, we've got NextCloud. And of course, there are other applications in here that you can use. I don't know if there's any process of adding additional applications if you wanted to. I don't know if they've got that ability in here. But it's definitely a cool starting point, I think, for most people to get a server set up with Home Assistant, NextCloud, chat services, all kinds of stuff. Really, really cool. But again, I did want to show you this one last little thing here. So let's go ahead and click here. We're going to deactivate. So we're no longer connected. And what I want to do is just go ahead and refresh. Hey, look, doesn't work. Again, refresh, doesn't work. So let's go ahead, just click activate here. We'll give that just a second to do its thing. And then, there we go. And now we are reconnected to our private network and able to access all of our data from there. So I know this was quite a bit different from what we've been doing for, say, the last year or so on the channel, where everything's been pretty much focused on Docker and Docker related containers, things like that. But I really wanted to share this. This was brought up in Discord the other day, and I checked it out and immediately thought I need to share this with my audience. So big shout out to James for pointing me in this direction. Very, very happy with this. If you're not part of the Discord already, go ahead and join. I'll try to have a link in the description for that as well. So yeah, again, all of the information you're going to need will be in the video description as per usual. So I think with all that being said, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up here. As always, thanks for your time. I always appreciate your support, and I'll talk to you in the next video.